I've gone over the formative assessment data from Module 2, and I wanted to address some of the questions and comments and what you found muddy based on last week's work. So I want to go over a couple of things. First of all, most of your questions related to the target behaviors, identifying on and off task behaviors, and how to set an operational definition. So a couple of things people commented with: they struggled with coming up with behavioral definitions, they understand the concept of defining a behavior and analyzing the on and off task behavior, but wasn't really sure about how they'd responded. The section in the text that talks about the basic purposes for identifying target behaviors in behavioral objectives, the difference in collecting off-task behavior and why it's not just the opposite of on-task behavior, or even how to identify on-task behavior. So we want to start with defining the behavior, the target behaviors. First of all, we have to identify the definition of the behavior. The definition is required for replication. In order to do this, to collect our data, to do an intervention, we want to be able to replicate it or do it in more than one place. We have to have a clear definition. Replication is required in order for us to determine the usefulness of this data to other situations. So if we're trying out an intervention, if I'm trying out an intervention with my client, I need to know if this intervention is going to work, if it's likely to work in other situations. If I can't replicate it, then I won't know that. And replication will begin with establishing a clear target definition, a clear definition of our target behavior. And this is really necessary for research. So even though this is very functional and we use applied behavior analysis to change behavior in a very functional way, we're still conducting research. And so everything that we're doing contributes to the larger body, particularly if we choose to share that. So it's also important for the practitioner in order to have these definitions. So in order to really work with our client, our student, our consumer well, we have to have an accurate, ongoing evaluation. That's how we know if what we're doing works. And in order to do that, we must have an explicit definition of behavior. We need to have an operational definition, and that means that it's got complete information. It's a usable definition that's very complete that we can use. And then it has to be accurate and believable, what's happening in terms of evaluation of the effectiveness. So when we write our target behavior definitions, what we want to look for is that it is accurate, it's complete, the definition is concise, and then we're clear about what is included in the behavior and what is excluded from the behavior. With our characteristics of good definitions, it is objective. We only refer to what is observable. So we don't talk about the motivation behind the behavior, why a student might engage in it, what they hope to gain. We address function of behavior at a later point, particularly when we want to design an intervention. The intervention needs to be related to the function, and we'll talk about that a lot more in Chapter 7. But for now, we're just trying to get a clear definition. So we only want to look at or refer to what we can see or hear, that's observable. It has to be clear. It's got to be readable and unambiguous. We want anyone who reads it to know exactly what they are looking for. And it has to be complete. We want to delineate the boundaries of the definition. So when does this occur and when does it not occur? There shouldn't be any question about that. I want to refer you to a resource that you have, which is your text. And on page 47, the authors have compiled a list of how we define on-task behavior, how different researchers have defined on-task behavior. And there's lots of different ways. The question is, is one of these more right than the others? No, not necessarily. You want to select what works for you, or you can even design your own definition so long as it meets those criteria that we discussed just a moment ago. And so, for instance, Fairbanks, Sugai, Giardino, and Lathrop say that in order to be considered on task, then your client or your consumer, your student, has to have an orientation toward the task at hand. That means that their body or their head or their eyes are actually facing toward whatever it is that they're doing. They have compliance with all directions, and so whatever directions have been given, the student is engaging in that, and they are working with appropriate materials. So they're working on the task at hand. That's how they would define on-task behavior. When we looked at our case study with Samantha, there were details about what she was doing and not doing. Really, we knew exactly what the off-task behavior was, right? Tapping the pencil and looking and staring into space for, for more than a couple of seconds. And so really it was up to you to decide on how you want to measure the on-task behavior. So this is why saying, well, the opposite of off-task doesn't work, because that's not clear and I won't know what that is if I have someone else do it. We want to have a good definition. It needs to be precise and concise. It needs to allow for reliable observation and accurate recording. If we have that, then no matter who is doing the data collection, we can have agreement. So I can come in and take the data, you can come in and take the data, the person whose office is down the hall from me could come in and take data, and all of our data